Your Excellency, the Vice President of Nigeria, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I bring you warm greetings from Accra, the home base of the Afrobarometer, and I do so on behalf of the governing board, management, and staff, and on behalf of the 40 network members of the Afrobarometer spread across 40 countries. I also want to express my deepest gratitude to my host, the Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library and the Shehu Musa Yar'adua Foundation for your kind invitation that has brought me here, and particularly for providing a forum like this for me to share and use the insights from Afrobarometer surveys to help all of us chart the future of democracy in Africa. I have been asked to speak about citizen sentiments and aspirations towards democracy in Africa. But in effect, it won't be me speaking. It will be more than 385,000 ordinary Africans speaking to Afrobarometer field researchers over 2 decades. For us, all we do is to give them the microphone, hear them speak, and aggregate the data. Just a bit of background to the presentation I'm sharing with you. As has already been hinted, we are in very challenging times so far as African democracy is concerned. Since 2020, soldiers have pushed out elected governments in 6 countries, and several presidents have defied constitutional term limits to claim their terms in office. Other leaders have been using subtler means to erode democracy, weaken checks on their authority, and harass the political opposition. These setbacks have correctly fueled widespread speculation about democracy losing ground on the continent. Afrobarometer has documented the democratic aspirations and experiences of African citizens for more than 2 decades. What I share with you here are the findings distilled from Afrobarometer data spanning 25 years, including the latest and the 9th round of nationally representative surveys conducted in 39 countries from 2021 to 2023. And this, ladies and gentlemen, represents the views of more than 3/4 of adult Africans. So, as I always like to do, in case lightning strikes and I'm not here in the next 1 hour or so, I want to share with you a summary of the arguments and submissions I'm going to make to you. Afrobarometer data confirms the following: that Africans aspire to live under governments that are democratic and accountable. It also confirms that ordinary citizens across the continent have been fairly consistent in expressions of their pro-democracy sentiments, even after we take account of the declining support for democracy when it comes to specific forms of it, particularly when it comes to opposition to military rule, there has definitely been a decline in levels of rejection of military rule as an alternative form of government. We'll come to that later. But we also contend that it is this weak and lagging delivery of democracy and accountable governance relative to what the people say they want, relative to the people's aspirations, that drives declines in faith in democracy, particularly when it comes to opposition to military rule. In consideration of the above, then, we believe that what African policymakers and policy actors and advocates need to focus on is how to boost the delivery of democracy and accountable governance, not less of it, how to boost the delivery of democracy and accountable governance, because that is what we need to do to sustain and deepen the people's faith, citizens' faith in democracy. Now let me get to the full presentation. As hinted, clear majorities express support for democracy and accountable governance norms, institutions, and processes, at the same time that they reject non-democratic alternatives, including military rule. So in the latest survey round, for which we have a full set of data, and by the way, the Afrobarometer is currently in the field, taking opinions again for the 10th time, and when the data is ready, hopefully we'll get the opportunity such as this to share them with you. But clear majorities express support for democracy and accountable governance, and that 2/3 said they prefer democracy to any other system of government. 2/3 said they prefer democracy to any other system of government. Africans are even more emphatic in their rejection of non-democratic alternatives, with roughly 8 in 10 citizens expressing dislike for one-man rule and one-party rule, and 66% saying that they reject military rule. But you notice that levels of rejection of military rule are not as high as those for rejection of one-man rule and one-party rule. So we just park that idea somewhere. Moreover, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, popular support for democracy in our round 9 surveys was not only limited to the D word. So we didn't only ask questions about democracy. We asked them, we tested their interest and their support and preference for many of the institutions and norms that you normally associate with democratic governance. And here too, we found overwhelming support for the idea of choosing our government through the ballot box. As many as 75% of our respondents say, so far as they are concerned, the ballot box is the only legitimate means by which leaders should be chosen. There was similar support for the idea of presidents being obliged, being compelled to obey court rulings. That again garnered 73% support of the people. Similarly, the idea of presidents complying to 2-term tenure limits, constitutional limits, was also endorsed by over 7 in 10 of our respondents. This is a very important finding, and this has been consistent throughout since we started asking this question in 2008. So when I hear any of the African country where a leader is saying, I'm so liked by my people that I want to stay, I know that is false. I know that what they are saying does not represent their people. Again, there is strong support for the executive to be oversighted by the legislature. There is strong support for media freedom, and there is sufficient and clear majority support for multi-party competition as opposed to single-party or no-party rule. And again, I want to emphasize that because of the challenges we have for multi-party democracy, it's a tendency to think that people may want to try other forms, but that is not the case so far for the average African and for the average African country. It's also important to note that trends in many of the indicators of support for democracy and accountable governance, the trend has been positive. And so when it comes to presidential compliance, the expectation that the president must comply with court decisions, that expectation has gone up by roughly 6 percentage points across the continent if you measure from 2011, 2013 to 2023. Again, a clear and a growing majority of Africans say that it is more important for government to be accountable to the people than to get things done. When we started asking this question in 2011, 2013, only a bare majority, a small majority, 52%, endorsed that view. Over time, that view has gained even more ground. And this we consider to be a very important finding because we are talking about a continent which has huge gaps in government performance on the development front. So when people say, so far as we are concerned, we prefer a government that is accountable to us, even if delivery is a bit porous, they are saying a lot. And I think we have to pay attention to that. It is the case, though, that some trends in the data portend a danger for the continent's democratic development. Even though it is still high at 75% on the average, support for the ballot box as the sole legitimate mechanism for choosing our leaders has declined by 7 percentage points over time. Then also, the idea of, 8 percentage points, let me correct myself, it's declined by 8 percentage points over time. And then on the question of whether you support democracy or you would like to try other forms of government, again, citizen support across the board has declined by 7 percentage points, with significant drops in several countries and maybe catastrophic drop in a country like South Africa, where in a 10-year period, support for democracy has dropped by 29 percentage points. Mali, where it has dropped, I've just been informed of a term limit or time limit. All right, 2 minutes, okay, what you can do. I think I'm going to sum up things in the interest of time and to say that, yes, there has been some declines in some aspects of popular support for democracy. And I think what stands out particularly is opposition to military rule, which has weakened by 11 percentage points over time, and a decline which is particularly huge in countries such as Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Cote d'Ivoire, and in Cameroon. And that may possibly explain some of what has happened in those countries, especially the Sahel. In round 9, we asked this question for the first time. We asked a question about whether you would accept, you would welcome military intervention in circumstances where government is egregiously abusing its power for its own ends. And here we got a small majority on the average saying yes, they will welcome military rule, and I just want to military intervention. And I also want to emphasize that the youth, young adults, 18, 25, were hugely supportive of that compared to the older ones who know better. So I'll park that here, but I want to just share a few statistics, a few of our findings about the supply of democracy compared to the demand, compared to expectations, because it is the gap between supply and demand that tends to create the problems that we've all been facing and are unhappy about. And when it comes to that, you are talking of a situation where supply has persistently lagged behind citizens' expectations of the levels of democracy and accountable governance that they say they want. And it has perceived supply of freedom of speech has gone down by 6 percentage points over a 10-year period. Credibility of national elections gone down by 7% over a 10-year period. President defying court orders has gone up. President ignoring parliament has also gone up. So basically presidential impunity is rising and so on. It's even worse when it comes to the supply of a government that has integrity, that supply of government integrity. So these things have been going down over time. But the upshot of all of this is that when we went back to look at what is it that has been driving declines in support for democracy, we found that obviously when election quality is bad, when elections are of low quality, they tend to depress citizens' faith in democracy. When government is governing unaccountably, when elected leaders are exuding impunity, all of them tend to drive support or declines in support for democracy. So far as we are concerned, if you are listening to ordinary African citizens across the continent, what you want to do is to address the supply gaps in democracy and accountable governance. And I think if we do that, we'll make the life of the African Union, ECOWAS, and all of us much happier, and African peoples much happier. So let's stay with the people, let's support democracy. Thank you.